A lot of you may not know, but I've been playing gacha games for many years now, and I'd say it's a genre of game that I enjoy casually outside of the competitive games that I usually play. My very first gacha game was an online MMO golf game called Pangya Online, which you probably haven't heard of, but it sadly shut down after a few years of service, but I met many people through it, and it was one of the first online communities that I felt a sense of connection and belonging to. Fast forward many years later, and of course we've seen the surge in popularity of games like Genshin Impact, Honkai Star Rail, and now Wuthering Waves, among many others, which have captured the attention of millions of players through their beautiful anime aesthetics, imaginative characters, and addicting gameplay. I never really got into Genshin or that open world type of game simply because of how much time you need to invest and how grindy it can quickly become. Not to mention, Paimon really annoyed the heck out of me when I first tried that game. Putting that aside though, there is one game that has really changed my opinion on open world gacha games, or even just gacha games in general, and that is Wuthering Waves, or WoW for short. I am not a gacha expert by any means, and this is just a candid conversation about my experience and opinions as a casual gamer, and for what that's worth, why I think WoW is really pushing boundaries to become the gacha game of this generation that you should all play. Before we get to that though, let's rewind a bit and talk about WoW's launch. So WoW was released in May last year and splashed onto the scene with a lot of hype and excitement, and was a game that many saw could be the first true competitor to the king of gacha gaming, yes, Genshin Impact. When I tried the game for the first time, I thought that it looked beautiful, the gameplay was fast-paced and fantastic, and characters were for the most part unique enough for me to be invested, at least for a little bit. What I also really appreciated was that the game was quite generous with its wishes or pulls, rewards and materials, and didn't feel like everything was just out to get me to swipe that card. Despite this though, there was still something missing and a feeling like this wasn't quite the Genshin killer that people were hyping it up to be. It still fell short in a few major areas, such as being very poorly optimized, the story was a confusing mess, the English voice acting was quite inconsistent, and the world felt kind of dull, depressing, and bland, which made exploration not that interesting to be honest. Over the next few patches in 1.x, Kuro did improve the game in a lot of these areas, although there were still some glaring problems that felt unresolved, namely the voice acting and the story having too much emphasis on Rover as the main character and not enough interactions or connections between other important characters, and there just wasn't a strong sense of direction in terms of where the game was going. In many ways, even though I could feel the game getting better, it still felt like a work in progress and not the polished, finished game that it was supposed to be. Nonetheless, it was nice to see Kuro actively listening to the community and making solid changes quickly. Now here's the crazy part, 2.0 and the introduction of Rina Sita changed everything. When Kuro first announced that the 2.0 update was coming right after 1.4, a lot of people, including myself, were really surprised because we thought there would at least be a few more filler patches exploring Huanglong before we got into the next region. And thank God Kuro decided to do that. Where do I even begin? I'm not joking when I say that Rina Sita improved upon literally everything, yes, everything, that people had complaints with and made WoW feel like the game it was supposed to be at launch. When you first step foot into Rina Sita, the thing that immediately stands out is just how diverse, vibrant, and gorgeous the region is. The main city of Raguna is beautiful and full of intricate details alluding to its Italian inspiration. The Echo Village is cute but with a sense of unease. The moors and foggy areas are foreboding and dark, and Nimbus Sanctum feels like you stepped into a dream you don't want to wake from. These are just a few of the different places you can explore in Rina Sita, and each feels distinct with its own atmosphere and identity that still feels connected to one another in the land of echoes. The echoes themselves, which essentially serve as the relics or artifacts for your characters, have all been revamped with amazing new designs and abilities that make them feel distinctly unique from one another. I had so much fun simply exploring and going around finding all the different echoes and completing my data bank collection to the point where I almost felt like I was playing a Pokemon game trying to catch them all. Speaking of exploration, Kuro has also introduced a sweeping set of changes to make it easier for you to explore each area and complete the various objectives, without compromising the sense of freedom and enjoyment of seeking out surprises on your own. For starters, the ability to fly for free without it being paywalled is an absolute game changer that alleviates so much of the frustration that often comes with traversal in these open world games. Not only this, there are also numerous wing rays and speed boosts located throughout the map to reduce the time you spend going from point A to point B. Traversal in WoW was already generally good before, but these changes just took it to another level. Prior to 2.0, a major pain point with exploration was how limiting the loot mapper was in finding chests, and how a lot of the hidden objectives were almost impossible to find unless you stumbled upon it or went out of your way to look it up using an external guide. Now, Kuro has introduced a compass that tells you the list of things you can find and where to find them as you explore each area, and I am amazed at how seamless and natural this has made exploration feel. The next point I want to touch on is the story and characters. As I mentioned previously, I did feel like the main story in 1.x was a bit disjointed, with a lot of terms and concepts thrown at you as the player without being explained properly, and a lot of the characters, while interesting in design, didn't really feel that meaningful other than to glaze and tell Rover how amazing and important they were to everything. It feels like Kuro really went back to the drawing board this time with 2.0 and came back with a storyline that was more interesting, easier to follow, and every character that has been introduced so far, from the elegant yet badass Carlotta, adorable Phoebe, to the boisterous and eager Brant, and of course everyone's favorite Zani, all have interactions that feel natural and that they all have a connection to Raguna and Renacita that is not centered on Rover, who is now the newcomer to this foreign land. The voice acting is top notch across the board and brings each character to life, although I have to say Rover's still leaves a lot to be desired. Hopefully Kuro changes that soon. Not only this, there's a big emphasis during the story on show, not tell, and every cutscene, camera angle, and animation is well thought out to immerse you in what is really happening. This was also the case for exploration and side quests, which I wasn't expecting at all, and you'd think the devs wouldn't go out of their way to put that level of attention into these, but they did, and I was just very impressed overall. I wish other gacha games did this too, because the level of yappery and drawn out conversations is just too much sometimes, and they usually don't let you skip it. The final thing I really want to give Kuro praise for is the music and soundtrack, which was already good to begin with, but they really knocked it out of the park with 2.0, and is, in my opinion, some of the best music I've listened to in an open world game. There are so many distinctive musical themes that tie seamlessly into each other as you explore Renacita, and further enhances each location's atmosphere and vibe, and some of the battle music sounds like it came straight out of a FromSoft game. If this is the level of production and quality we're getting less than a year into the game's release, I can't wait to see what else the devs have in store for us. Right now, Wuwa truly feels like the closest thing to a AAA experience from a gacha game, and I highly recommend that you guys check it out. Anyway, that is enough rambling from me. If there's one thing I want you guys to take away from this video, it's not just that Wuthering Waves is an amazing gacha game and that 2.0 and Renacita is absolute peak, but it's how impressed I am with Kuro as a company, especially for a gacha game. The way in which they have listened to the community and the feedback and actually improved the game in response just makes you feel like they genuinely care about the players and want them to have the best experience possible. I can't say the same for other games in the genre, which feel more like money printing machines that respect your money but not your time. Of course, Wuwa still has a lot of things that can be improved, but I have confidence in Kuro to actually make these changes without taking years, given their already amazing track record. Regardless, this is just my opinion as a casual gamer. It has honestly been hard for me to go back to other gachas after sticking with Wuwa, so in a sense it really has ruined gacha gaming for me because of how good it is. It's free to play, well, for the most part, so if you haven't already, go check it out for yourselves. As always, thanks for your time, and I'll catch you in the next one.